Welcome to this C# tutorial video. Topics covered: using a text box controls text property to get input from the user, moving user input data from a text box text property to a program variable, coding a button click event handler method, declaring and using class variables, using a text box controls text property to display a value, moving data from a program variable to a text box text property. Let's begin by reviewing a form that we can use to demonstrate these topics. So on this form we see 2 label controls, 2 text box controls, and 3 buttons. Let's discuss some of these pieces. So starting with the first text box, the program code we write will get user input from the txt score.text property. So the text property of this first text box is going to provide us with user input. Right below that text box we see the txt score total control, and the txt score total control is a read-only output text box. The program code we write for the btn add underscore click event will provide the calculated value for the txt score total.text property. So the add button is going to play an important role for us. The event handler we create for the btn add underscore click event is where we put the code that will calculate the total and move the string formatted copy of the calculated value to the txt score total.text property. 2 other buttons worth mentioning. The clear scores button, the event handler we create for the btn clear scores underscore click event, will be used to clear the total variable, clear the screen's text box control text properties, and set the focus at the starting position back on the txt score control. And finally, the exit button. The event handler for the btn exit underscore click event will be used to close the program. So let's go over to Visual Studio and demonstrate some of the concepts. So here we can see that I designed the form. Now, if I'm ready to start coding the event handler for my add button, I've already named it the way I want to. I got pretty much everything on my form named the way I want it named, and I'm ready to start creating code for event handlers. To get the default event handler started for the add button, I just point at the add button here in design view and double click it, and that toggles me over to the code view. And when I double clicked that, it created the header line for the event handler method of the click on the add button. So we can see this private void btn add underscore click and so on, the opening bracket, the closing brackets. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see that a little better. So here we are at 150%. Let me take that up to 175. So double clicking back over here in design, double clicking on this add button toggled me over to the code view, and it created this empty method for us, this event handler method. So now I want to put some code in this. So let me pause the screen while I type in the code. Okay, I've typed in a lot of comment lines and 3 lines of code in the btn add underscore click event handler that handles the click event on our add button. So first line of code I typed in is score total plus equal int32.parse opening parenthesis txt score dot text closing parenthesis semicolon. So this line of code is getting the value that is in the text property of our txt score text box, converting it to an integer, and adding that value to the variable score total. Now notice that this is an assignment statement. We're assigning a new value to that score total variable. This is not a variable declaration statement. We do not want to declare the score total variable in the btn add underscore click method, because this method gets fired every time somebody clicks the add button when the program's running. The method runs every time somebody clicks the add button. So we don't want to start back at 0 every time somebody clicks the add button. We want the total to keep growing every time somebody adds something on the screen and clicks add. We want the total to grow. So score total needs to be declared as a class variable. Let me scroll up in the code so you can see where I did that. So up near the top of the class, underneath this public, under this public form score calculator method, I put in a big comment block that says class variable declaration area. Big comment block so we can't miss it and we know why this is here. And you can see right here, here's the line that declares our score total variable and starts it off with 0. So it gets declared one time in the class, and then it's used over and over again every time the add button is clicked. So what else do I do down in the add button for this demo? Not a lot. So after I calculate that, I'm going to put that value back to the screen into the txt score total dot text property. So this line here, we can see it's another assignment statement. So we're taking the value that is in the score total variable, we're converting it to string data type so that it can go into this text property of the text score total control, and then the user will be able to see that on the screen. And then one last thing I want to do in this demo is I want to set the focus back to our input control text box. So txt score is really the only input box we have on the screen for user to type stuff into, but if they've been tabbing around, the control may be sitting someplace else on the screen, and I want to put the focus back on the txt score text box. So just 3 lines of code and a lot of comments so we can remember what we're doing when we look at this code. Let me go back over and look at it in design view again. So we talked extensively about this text box, the event handler for this add button, this text box that receives the value back from the program. What about the clear scores button here, the event handler for that? Well, I've already coded that. Let's go over and look at it. So in the clear scores, I'm setting the variable back to 0. Notice I'm not declaring a new variable. I'm just assigning a value to it. You don't see int in front of this. This is not declaring a new variable. This is using the variable that's already been declared. So we don't have a data type specified in front of it. And notice that I'm setting the 2 text boxes, text properties, to empty strings, and I'm putting the focus back on the input text box. And back over to design view, and the exit button. So I created the event handler for a click on the exit button by double clicking on the exit button here in design view, and that threw me over to the code view and coding the exit button. Really, I got a couple comments in there, but it's really just a matter of typing in this dot close, opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis, and a semicolon. Now, let's talk a little bit more about variables. So this variable that's declared outside of all the methods in the class is called a class variable. It's visible to all the methods in the class. Okay, so you've seen the code that I wrote for this little demo. So let's wrap up this video. This concludes this video.